2026 Live Awards Ceremony. I just got word it's Wallywood's birthday, for those of you that want to applaud to that. To all those new attendees, a sincere thanks for your support for the recognition of and promotion for the art form of comic book inking. And for returning attendees and members, much gratitude for your ongoing solidarity. This year we have a special treat and a privilege to share with you. We are tossing the script and the usual structure of the ceremony for a more than worthy reason, as we will be starting off with a milestone and special appearance and presentation by Jim Steranko. But before I officially present him, I want to make a request and a note or two. Please refrain from using any flashbulb photography while Jim is on stage. And secondly, Jim will be discussing a variety of things relating to inking, and among those things, we'll be mentioning of a few of the notable ink artists who happen to be the Lifetime Achievement Award recipients. And I'll cover that later. I want to give special thanks also to Special Ambassador of the Inkwells Awards, J. David Spurlock, for all of his help today. So now that we've had that all covered, I am truly honored at this time to call to the podium illustrator, publisher, author, musician, escape artist, and Eisner Hall of Fame comics creator, Jim Steranko.
I was kind of recruited for this. Maybe because I knew most of those guys intimately. I'll tell you a little bit more in a moment, but right now, I wanted to welcome you personally to the 9th Annual Inkwells Awards, the only place where you can say, "Ink you, Jack," and get away with it. I cannot express how pleased I am that the award is named for my old friend and collaborator, Joe Sinnott. When I entered the comic book biz, I was an art director for a prominent ad agency, in addition to fronting a rock and roll group 3 or 4 nights a week. That's 2 full-time jobs. I was making a decent living at the time. But comics represented a lifelong dream that combined entertainment and art, and really a hell of a lot more. I was essentially a designer at the agency, but often drew and painted images which ran from beer bottles for billboards to baby seats for automobiles. That may sound pedestrian to you, but believe me, the invoicing was top dollar. Comic books, on the other hand, bottom dollar. Frankly, I didn't care, because I wasn't there for the money. Simply put, I entered the comic book field to make a personal, expressive statement about narrative art. Just between us, right here, I thought I was pretty hot stuff, especially as a neighbor. That notion lasted until Joe Sinnott and Frank Giacoia inked my rather amateurish art. And they actually made it look professional. That's the inker's job. What a revelation. Over the years, I've come to believe that those 2 men, Sinnott and Giacoia, were responsible for putting me on the Marvel map. All because of their consummate skill and unflagging dedication. Sinnott and Giacoia may have been more responsible for my success than I was. Well, what the hell am I talking about? Unflagging dedication. I remember one year turning in a Shield story, pencils, during the Christmas and New Year's week. And Joe not only inked it on the holiday, on Christmas Day, but he never took a single shortcut. He improved the work. Now, do you know what I mean by dedication? Personally, I found it impressive to write a story, outline it, then create layouts, then pencil the pages, then script the books, and then repeat the process again by inking the tail. The magic just gets worn away. You know what I mean? So as soon as I had a little power and I took over writing, I immediately dropped the inking process. Now, when I got in the business, I thought I knew something about inking until I saw how Sinnott and Giacoia transformed, that word, transformed my pages. What made them consummate inkers was that they came from a penciling background. Their draftsmanship was impeccable. They automatically corrected inaccurate drawing while they inked. But not so much that they subverted whatever magic I'd invested in the pages. They did not cover me up. They enhanced my vision. And it doesn't get any better than that. Here's the way I see it. You can argue with me about this point. But I believe inkers have a similar relationship to those that cinematographers, or you might know them as DPs, have with film directors. Both directors and comic book artists envision their scenes, the ones they're about to create, for their own specific mediums. Directors structure a scene in the same way that artists draw panels. And sometimes they actually do it, like Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott, a trained artist, did his own boards. Beautiful. Directors decide on the placement of the camera. They determine if it's a high or low or eye-level shot, and how far from the cam the subjects are placed, that is, the actors, the important thing in the shot. Then the director places his actors strategically in that shot, and finally he instructs the cinematographer or the director of photography, who is not the cam operator. It's another guy completely. He's the guy who lights the scenes, who determines the appropriate lenses, who decides on the filter selection, and similar technical and often artistic aspects. In essence, the DP interprets the director's vision. Sometimes he enhances it. Sometimes he doesn't. And as far as I'm concerned, that's precisely what inkers do for pencilers. Yes? Shout it out.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Cinematographers are essentially extensions of directors because they're responsible for realizing the vision of their directors. just as inkers are responsible for rendering the visions of their artists. To compound the analogy, like DPs, inkers bring their own style to the page with line treatments that can be lush and organic, like Al Williamson, or dark and edgy, like Len Cole, or emotional, like that of Joe Kubert, or sensual, like Frank Frazetta, or documentary-ish, like Alex Schomburg, or elegant, like Reed Crandall, or authoritative, like that of Russ Heath, or Epicurean, like that of Wally Wood, or disturbing, like Graham Ingalls, or sterile, like Chris Ware, or expressive, like Harvey Kurtzman, or energetic, like Jack Cole, or functional, like Alex Toth, and even idiosyncratic, like the rendering of Basil Wolverton. And I have a name for you. And I saved it for last because this guy represented playfulness in inking, style, rendering. Raise your hand if you know who I'm talking about. Chad Grothkop. Well, you need to Google that one, guys. Believe me, this guy said something in inks that none of the rest of those that I've named even approached. So, what we're talking about is the interpretation of pencils. Kirby, the warrior god of comics, put everything on the page, so no interpretation was ever needed. Not that he didn't get it anyway. But the flip side, however, could be a headache. For example, the most vexing pencils I personally ever inked was pinch hitting for Dan Atkins on a Daredevil cover by Gene Colan. Gene drew his comic books in tone. And tone, my friends, is the enemy of line. We need hazard pay for Gene Colan above and beyond the call. FYI, Atkins was my best friend for many years. He's gone now. Gone but not forgotten. I still recall with great affection his contribution to the art form, including something you guys know nothing about. It's the Atkins top secret super dense ink formula. You weren't expecting that, were you? Atkins and I, as you know, we split Strange Tales. We actually started as enemies, but became close friends along the way. Probably because I'm such a nice guy. One day. Anyway, along the way, he shared his premier secret with me. Now, look, I can't explain it to you. I don't know exactly how he did it, but sometimes I was there. And in those days, back in the 60s, many of us, maybe all of us, we're searching for a smooth ink that would cover any kind of pencil line with maximum density. And you guys know what I mean. I started with Higgins Waterproof Black, moved on to Art Tone Extra Dense Black, then to Pelican Ultra Black, and finally wound up with Kohinoor Rapidographing. Pathetic. It would seem like every time I found the holy grail of ink, they changed the damn formula. And so the density of it became gray. And the implication is you had to go over every line twice. So Atkins had enough. He decided to make his own ink. And that is the definition of a maverick. Again, I can't tell you the formula, but I watched him manufacture the concoction a couple times. He'd measure out various commercial inks according to their virtues. Smoothness, density, the best deal at the art store. And he'd pour them all into in a very carefully measured amount into a metal pot, and then he'd add his secret ingredients. Now don't ask, but I believe one of them was a chunk of asphalt that he pried off the street in front of his neighbor's home. I think another one might have been a couple swigs of tar, maybe even a buffalo chip or two. Then he put the works into the oven, and he'd let it brew, you know, like Richard Castellano's tomato sauce, you know what I mean? You know that movie? Okay, The Godfather.
Yeah.
Hey, come on. He'd let it perk for hours until it was the perfect consistency. And then he'd split the result with me, and I still have some of the Atkins Ultra Dense Super Black Top Secret ink on my shelf, which I use very sparingly because there will be no more. The heartbreaker. We are living in a period where the concept of putting good inkers on weak pencilers and bad inkers on good pencilers to create a medium of mediocrity is the norm, but it's commercial. Maybe it's necessary. But I can't always embrace the idea because an inker can make or break virtually any book. Doesn't matter who pencils. That reminds me of a kind of ongoing argument I have with RTB. You know RTB? Give me a hand, guys. It's Roy the Boy. An argument I have with RTB about who has the greater responsibility or the greater power, the writer or the artist. Now, what else can Roy say? Because writers are that way. He claims that writers shoulder 50% of the success or failure of every book. I say it's more like 15 to 25%. And here's my proof. Follow me. A dynamically illustrated story can save a rotten script. Because 70, 80, 90% of a comic book's appeal is predicated on its imagery. Hell, sometimes comic book imagery can be so effectively envisioned, it doesn't even require a script to tell a story. However, even the most superb script can never save a story that is amateurishly drawn and sequenced. Yell out if you get my drift.
Yeah.
And much the same is true regarding inking. You agree?
Agreed.
Another observation about artists who ink their own work. That is, they pencil minimally and draw with a pen or brush. Boy, do I love these guys. Kubert. Kubert was one of them. Alcala was one of them. And I'm going to give you one more chance to make up to me. Manili. Raise your hands if you know Manili. Joe Manili, a 50s artist, maybe in the business for 8 or 10 years. And he produced a prodigious amount of work. How did he do it? He hardly penciled a thing. He drew with the pen. Brilliant, brilliant guy. They are so prodigious because they work over light layouts and actually draw with a pen, which I find to be incredible, because I grew up my way with putting everything down with a pencil, figuring it all out carefully, and then going back in and inking. The Filipino artists are particularly adept at that skill, such as my friend, the astonishing Rudy Nebris. Brilliant, brilliant guy. And have you ever considered this? Every Filipino artist that we know, from Nestor Redondo to Alex Nino, Tony DeZuniga, they have uncanny drawing with ink skill. How's that possible? Could it be a coincidence? Here's my theory. It's in the water. Go ahead and laugh. It's as good a theory as any. By the way, I was going to mention how to make those expensive Winsor & Newton No. 3 sables last longer than 2 jobs before they split. But I'm running out of time. So, I'm going to wrap with this advice for those of you who may have aspirations about getting into the inking business. It's very simple if you decide to get into the comic book field, because you only have 2 things to worry about. For example, if you get an assignment to work on a Jim Lee book or look elsewhere, you have an option. If you work on that Jim Lee book, you have nothing to worry with. But if you have to look elsewhere, then you may have 2 things to worry about. If you get a hot Marvel book or a DC book, or you may have to make the rounds. Now look, if you get a hot Marvel or DC book, you have nothing to worry about. But if you have to make the rounds, you have 2 things to worry about. You may find a book with zombies that's the flavor of the month, or you may have to take whatever's left over. Now look, if you get a book with zombies, you have nothing to worry about. But if you have to go into whatever's left over, you have 2 things to worry about. You have to take whatever's left, and if it's successful, you have nothing to worry about. But if it's not, and you have to take whatever's available, you have 2 things to worry about. That is whether you can pay your bills and keep your wives or girlfriends happy. Now, if you can pay your bills and keep your wives and girlfriends happy, you have nothing to worry about. But if you can't, you've got 2 things to worry about. If you can scrape up enough to live, or if you starve to death. Now, if you can scrape up enough money, you got nothing to worry about. But if you can't, and you starve to death, you'll either go to heaven, or you'll go to that other place. Now, if you go to heaven, you got nothing to worry about. But if you go to the other place, you'll be so damn busy shaking hands with all your inker friends, you'll never have time to worry about it. There's the award ceremony. Thank you so much.
I'm not topping that, don't
Tell me you got that.
okay. I'm pretty much gonna skip my speech here.
If you don't skip it, you got two things to worry about. And it goes okay.
All right, let me get this business over with real quickly. Just before proceeding, I want to give heroes a thank you. A hero's thank you to Sheldon Drone, who reached out and welcomed us 6 years ago for this convention to be our host show. I also want to pass love on to Andrew Mansell, Rico Renzi, Trey Alexander, Carla Marsh, and the entire Heroes Con staff. Unlike some, Shelton and company are not dismissive of ink artists. They're true supporters, friends, fans of inkers, and it's thanks to them that we get our one day to be heard and recognized. Our organization is officially a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are the only advocacy representing the art form of comic book inking in the multiverse. Our craft is often misunderstood, and artists can fall under the radar in the scheme of things, so our mission is to promote it and recognize its best artists. And we're going to cut that out in highlights and go, let me get into this. Like I said, I was going to be winging this one. Okay, Coburn School Scholarship. This year's student recipient was Matthew Newman. Together with Ms. Inkwell, it was my first time ever to visit the school, so I was able to cross that off my bucket list. Dave's sister Betty gave the following statement. Congratulations to the 7th annual Dave Simons Inkwell Memorial Scholarship recipient, Matthew Newman. How quickly time passes. It's hard for me to realize that it's been 7 years since we lost such a talented and devoted artist, and I lost my best friend and only brother. It's amazing that so many people still come together and work so hard year after year to keep his memory alive. I can't express in words how grateful I am. I'm sure Dave would wonder what all the fuss was about. He was humble that way. I don't think he ever truly appreciated or understood what an impact he had on many people. He inspired those around him without realizing it. I hope that Matthew finds inspiration to be creative and successful. Congratulations and best of luck. With sincere appreciation and respect, Betty Simons Rock. Okay, here are the first 5 categories and nominees for the 2016 Inkwells Awards ballot. The first category is Favorite Inker, which is for the favorite ink artist over pencil work of another artist from 2015 cover dated interior American comic book material. And the nominees are, Scott Hanna, with all those credits I'm not even bothering. Paragraph. Carl Kessel, anyone know? Kessel. For Fantastic Four from Marvel. Danny Mickey for Batman and Wonder Woman at DC. Joe Prado for Batman 66, The Lost Episode, and Cyborg from DC. And Wade Von Grawbadger for Star Wars, All New Captain America, and Spider-Man for Marvel, including Justice League of America, Legends of the Dark Knight for DC, and Astro City for Image. And the winner is, with 24.5% of the votes, Joe Prado. She was looking for me. Oh, we did? Okay. Joe was not able to make it here today, and he has a friend that's Breno Tamaro, an artist in Artist Alley, to accept this award. But we do have an acceptance speech via video from Joe.
Hear it?
We've never done a video thanks, so please Well, that's what.
Thinking about all of these.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I do have a speech here. I'll read it off as quick as possible. First of all, it's an honor for me to have been nominated for such a prestigious award such as the Inkwells Awards. All of the hard work behind the scenes of this organization is outstanding, such as helping professionals in need and spreading the word about what the art of inking is. Now, winning such an award is extremely humbling, and it makes me very happy that many fans and fellow professionals reached out to me to express their support. At heart, I'm still a fanboy and admire so many of my peers and longtime artists and inkers that have inspired me. People like Terry Austin, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Joe Sinnott, George Perez, Romeo Tangle, Alfredo Alcala, Tony DeZuniga, Sal Buscema, Tom Palmer, Bob Layton, Scott Williams, Danny Mickey, Mark Farmer, and so many others. Well, there's nothing else I could add here. Just keep working, learning, admiring this form of art which deserves all the recognition and praise. Thank you so much to the fans and professionals. You are the crucial part of my inspiration. Keep inking, Joe Brown. This second category is the Most Adaptable Inker Award, showing exceptional ink style versatility over other pencil artists in 2015 cover dated Interior American Comic Book Material. And the nominees are Jonathan Glapion for Wonder Woman, Batman and Superman, Multiversity, Thunder World Earth 2, World's End, Green Arrow, Robin Rises, Sinestro, all from DC. Scott Hanna, same paragraph. Jay Leiston, Future Imperfect, Superior Iron Man, Spider-Woman, Uncanny Humans from Marvel, and Justice League United from DC. Norm Rapmond, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Flash Annual, and Convergence, Superman, DC. Wade Vaughn Grawbadger, All New Captain America from Marvel, Justice League of America, Legends of the Dark Knight from DC, and Astro City from Image. And lastly, Walden Wong, Earth 2, World's End, Justice League Dark from DC, and Wolverines and A-Force from Marvel. And the winner, with 26.8 of the votes, and his third consecutive win in this category, is Walden Wong.
Thank you for everyone that voted. I didn't think that I would be nominated because I still feel like I'm new to this. Even though I've been doing this for 20 years, I still feel like some of the other nominees in the category, they were inking way before I even started going into inking. So this means a lot to me. So thanks. Thank you everyone that voted.
Next, he's after Scott Hanna's record. Most Inkwells Awards. Okay. Third category is the props for the ink artist deserving of more attention for their work over other pencilers from 2015 cover dated Interior American Comic Book Material. The nominees are Eber Ferreira for Martian Manhunter at DC, Stefano Gaudiano, Walking Dead and Manifest Destiny for Image. If I'm butchering any names, I apologize. Jonathan Glapion for Wonder Woman, Batman Superman from DC, Mark Irwin, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, The Multiversity, Ultra Comics, Superman and Wonder Woman, all for DC, and X-Men from Marvel, and Danny Mickey for just Batman DC. Sean Parsons, Aquaman Convergence Speed Force from DC. Juan Velasco, Contest of Champions, Superior Iron Man, Legendary Star-Lord, Amazing Spider-Man, and Nova, all from Marvel. And Wade Vaughn Grawbadger, All New Captain America, Spider-Man Marvel, Spider-Man from Marvel. Justice League of America, Legends of the Dark Knight from DC, and Astro City from Vertigo DC. This year's winner, with 22% of the votes, is the same as last year's. Still apparently deserving of more attention, Wade Von Gravage. Unfortunately, Wade had a death in the family on Wednesday. His grandmother died, and had to understandably cancel his appearance here. I don't have anything to read for this reason, but I will accept his trophy and send it to him. On behalf of the Inkwells Awards, I send Wade and his family our thoughts, prayers, and love during this difficult time. The fourth category is the SPAMMY Award, which stands for Favorite Small, Press, and Mainstream Independent 2015 Cover Day Material American Comic Book Inc. Blah, blah, blah. For Marvel, for non-Marvel, non-DC. Here we go. The nominees are Stefano Gaudiano for Walking Dead, Manifest Destiny from Image, Rich Kozlowski, Archie vs. Predator, and Archie vs. Sharknado from Archie. Cliff Rathburn for Invincible at Image, Jordi Tarragona, Exo Manowar from Valiant Comics, and Ryan Wynn for Exo Manowar, Q2, Return of Quantum and Woody, Divinity, Ninjak, Book of the Death, Fall of Ninjak, and Unity, all from Valiant. And after 3 nominations as runner-up in this category to date, the winner, with 37% of the votes, is Stefano Gaudiano.
It's kind of emotional that Mr. Stranko was here to introduce the awards this year. I grew up, as many people did, probably just in awe of Stranko's talent. I remember that cover that he inked over Gene Colan's pencils, and I thought, well, he did it, you know? It doesn't quite feel like Colan. You have to look at it twice. I mean, you look at it and it's like, well, it's Colan with Stranko. But as an artist, and every other, every other hat that he's worn is spectacular. And the fact that he would be here validating inkers means a heck of a lot, because he inspired so many artists in such a broad scale that it's easy to think that someone like that would dismiss the role of an inker. When I think of Stranko, I think of the way Craig Russell, Barry Smith, and Paul Lacy, all of these great artists from generations slightly younger than him were inspired by him and started drawing things like him. And to this day, his imagery continuously resonates in comics. And because now we're making movies out of comics in the movies, you see his creativity, his raw creativity resonating everywhere. And yet, here he is, and he's saying, Frank Giacoia and Joe Sinnott made me who I am. Now, we can quibble with that. I would quibble with percentages of relevance that he attributes to inkers and to pencilers. I mean, I can think of a few stories that were really great, that had not super professional looking art and still worked. For example, Grant Morrison's Animal Man was a great run, and no offense to Chess True or Trout, I don't know how you say his name, but his work always had to me what felt at the time like an amateurish quality. So you could say that stories are as important as the art. But then there's this other way of looking at it, which is Chess's art might have looked amateurish, but it had life, it had something that added to a story. In the end, the way I look at it is everyone that works on a creative effort, we're talking about comics now, but this applies to music too, can put something into it. And if that something comes from a place that is both a pure expression of yourself and respectful of the work that you're doing, the work is going to shine. And where does that leave inkers? Joe Prado said that this is a prestigious award. I feel like it's a prestigious award. I'm very proud to have received this award. Most people nowadays don't think that inking is a very prestigious category. So now I remember my notes. When I was 7 years old, I'm the youngest in my family, and we had comics around the house because in Italy that was very common. Comics were everywhere, all kinds of comics. Donald Duck comics, French Metal Hurlant comics, American comics, all kinds of comics. And my brothers were older, they're the ones that exposed me to the idea that it's possible to draw, because they would do drawings, their own comics, or copy things out of comics, and they were better than I was. But one day, I discovered tracing paper. And I saw this cover of Captain America, I forget what number it was, great iconic Jack Kirby cover of Captain America running towards the viewer, and I put some tracing paper and I traced it. And I was so proud of it. I thought it turned out so well. I thought, wow, I can do this too. And I showed it to my oldest brother, and he looked at it and said, wow, that's amazing. And then he looked at it again and said, that's tracing paper. I said, yeah. He said, well, you just traced it. I said, yeah. Look at how well I traced it. I traced it really well. So here I am, and I'm 50 years old now, and I can tell my brother, not only can you make a living tracing comics, you get awards. Now, how the heck is it that somebody can make a living tracing comics and get an award for tracing someone else's art? I mean, it's kind of astounding. Well, Mr. Steranko talked about that, and that's how it's possible. It's possible because even something as small as a line can have the power of every other piece of that work. And in fact, so many great artists are also great inkers, and so many great inkers are great all-around artists. I don't know, I need to get more sleep and I need to stop rambling. But the thing is, I remember, another thing that I remember from my childhood that was somewhere in my notes and I was going to fold it in somehow, is I was in math class and I started thinking about numbers, okay, well, you have 1 and you have 2, then you have 1.5, 1.9, 1.9999, and you get into that thing, that sometimes kids can do, or adults even, thinking about, wait a second, this could go on forever. We can add 9s forever. And I realized that it's not just a question that you can go 999 to infinity before you get to 2. You can go 1555 to infinity before you get to 1556. And so I realized that between each number, there is infinity. And as an inker, this is what I've realized makes me passionate about inking and makes this award prestigious, is that in line work, there is some kind of infinity that is not easy to recognize, but it's there. And that's why an inker can make a book or break a book, basically, because it's just a one-dimensional thing. It's a line. There's no tone. It's just a line. But you can do something with that line that can make the difference between the artwork being successful and the artwork not being successful. So the inker is responsible to the penciler, as Mr. Steranko was saying. Joe Simnot and Frank Giacoia enhanced his work, that brought his vision to fruit. The inker is responsible to a writer, because we have to also read the story and bear in mind what is the story trying to say and what is the artist trying to say. We are responsible to the editor, because the editor not only is counting on us to work on Christmas Day so that the book gets put out, he's also counting on us to make sure that as we ink, we don't stray from what the story is as much as from the artwork. We're responsible to the colorist. We have to make sure that the colorist can understand how everything fits together, what the depth of the image is, so on and so forth. So the inker has to be respectful of every other aspect of the craft in order to be a good inker. And the last thing that I remember from my notes was a quote by a philosopher, Francis Bacon, who said, in order to, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like, in order to control nature, you have to, in order to master nature, that's what it was, in order to master nature, you have to obey nature. And I feel like inking follows that principle. In order to be a great inker, you have to obey the story, you have to obey the art, you have to obey the audience's needs. So for me, what is incredibly prestigious about being an inker, I mean, believe me, it took a lot of convincing to help my parents deal with the fact that I wasn't going to be a scientist, I was going to trace other people's drawings for a living. Because when I said I wanted to do comics, they were like, okay, you know, there's a lot of famous Italian people that are cartoonists, Hugo Pratt, Hugo Greca, you know, it's rich people. We can deal with that. But when I said I wanted to be an inker, they were mortified. They felt like, what? You know? And they just could not understand how prestigious it is to be an inker. And for me, the prestigious thing is that to be an inker, we have to master a quality that I think is a good quality as a human being in general. To be strong, powerful, present, proud even, but always also to be humble, and to be respectful. And that's what I think makes inking an incredibly profound craft. Like every craft, there's also art in it, but it's a very noble craft. So thanks for letting me ramble at length about how great I think it is to be an inker, and for giving me the award. And I think that it kind of goes without saying maybe, that the award, it goes to me, it goes to Joe Prado, but it seems to me that the whole point is to just acknowledge that inking is important. It doesn't matter who the award goes to. We're just saying, hey, inking is important. We're no longer recognizing the Eisners, really, you know, but inking is an important thing.
That was in my speech notes.
I covered that. And I feel lucky, honestly. I think we're gonna, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that inking is dying out, you know. More and more artists are inking their own work. God bless them. There's nothing better than an artist who's capable of inking their own work. People are going digital, straight to pencil, painted comics, all this stuff. There's less and less. I'm one of those lucky guys that is on a popular zombie book. I mean, it's kind of, it's funny that it's like a small press award. It's like, no, it's you know, just, it's like the fact that The Walking Dead is Walking Dead might have a little something to do with the fact that I was nominated. I've worked on independent books for 30 years without getting nominated, you know. But Walking Dead, people have heard about it. There's not a lot of jobs that you can make a living at as an inker. This job that I have is not going to last very long. And I'm starting to think about what my options are going to be, like Mr. Stranko was saying. I don't think there's going to be a lot of work for inkers in the coming years. I'm just really happy that I had an opportunity to make at least part of my career for as long as it's going to last as an inker. So that's it. Thanks for your patience.
I think that was pretty damn good without a written speech and a no slate. Okay. All right, our fifth category is the All-in-One Award for Favorite Artist known for inking his own pencil work in 2015, cover dated, Interior American comic book material. The nominees are Ben Dewey, The Autumn Lands, and Tooth and Claw from Image, Jason Fabok, I guess that's how you say it, for Justice League at DC. Francesco Francavilla, Afterlife with Archie, from Archie. Paul Gulacy, The Rook, from Dark Horse. Eric Larson for Savage Dragon, from Image. Terry Moore for Rachel Rising, Abstract Studio. And Fiona Staples for Archie at Archie, and Saga from Image. And the winner with 37% of the votes is Jason Fabok. Unfortunately, Jason wasn't able to make it here today, and I'll be accepting this trophy on his behalf, but he did email me his statement just during the show today, so excuse me, I gotta read it off my phone. Over the past 5 years, I've been inking myself through digital means mostly, but also traditionally on covers. Over this time, I've gained such respect and admiration of the discipline of inking and the inking greats who have paved the way for the modern comic artist. As a youth, I looked to the penciler and dreamt of honing my craft to one day draw like one of the greats. As a professional, I not only look upon the great pencils of past and present, but also the great inkers as I try to hone my skills in this medium. It is truly a great artistic discipline and one worthy of respect and admiration. This award is a great honor for me, and to be recognized alongside my peers and fellow nominees is a humbling experience. There is so much great work being done today in our medium and all sorts of different styles and techniques that as an artist I find myself spurred on by the creativity of others and a desire to grow more and more in my art. First, I'd like to thank Heroes Con promoter Shelton Drum and his team for hosting the awards at this year's show. A big thank you goes out to Bob Ullman for the hard work he puts into the awards and the Inkwell Nomination Committee for their nomination for this year's All-in-One category. I'd also like to thank DC Comics for taking a chance on me back in 2010 and allowing me to chase my dream of becoming a comic book artist. Every time I go into a comic shop and see my work on the shelf, I'm struck with awe, as well as thankfulness for the opportunity to work in this profession. More specifically, I'd like to thank Diane Nelson, Dan DiDio, Jim Lee, and Bob Harris for their hard work at DC Comics and giving me the shot of working on some of my favorite books. I'd also like to thank my editor in Justice League, Brian Cunningham, who has come beside me as a friend, but also a mentor to guide my work, critique it, and help in making me a better artist. Also to Larry Gannon and Ben Abernathy for the calls of encouragement and the desire to see me grow as an artist. To Jeff Johns for giving me the opportunity to prove myself on one of the DC's biggest titles and giving me the freedom to explore artistically to do what I believe I do best. Tell big, bold, action-packed stories that readers want to read. Jeff is a great friend of mine, and I've loved working with him on this project and hopefully more in the future. Thanks, Jeff. To David Finch, my first mentor, who took me under his wing back in 2009 and taught me the ins and the outs of drawing comics, and for sticking out his neck and sending my portfolio to DC in order to pursue a career. I'm forever grateful to him and his family for the goals they have helped me achieve. To the fans who have followed my work and supported me in this career, I wouldn't be in the position I am today if it weren't for the passionate readers and fans of the comic book medium. To my teachers through school who always encouraged me artistically and opened up my eyes to the world of illustration and comic art. To my mom and dad, who always supported my goals and led by example of what hard work and determination looks like. To my grandparents, who showed me what unconditional love and support can do for a young dreamer. And the biggest thank you to my wife, Sarah, who has supported me in this wild career for the last 6 years, giving up her time and sacrificing so much so that I could work the crazy hours needed to get these comics done. I'm sure every comic artist can attest to how demanding this career can be, and without the love and respect of our loved ones, we would not be where we are today. My wife deserves the Comic Book Wife of the Year award for all she has done for me. And to my 10-month-old son, Eli, who is the greatest joy and the best work of art I've ever done. I can only hope that he grows up loving comics and develops a passion for art as well. And lastly, to thank God for opening up the doors for me and pursue this career, for guiding the steps in my walk through this life. Thank you all. Round of applause for Jason Fabon, please. Thanks immensely to all of them. Another round of applause for the artists. Now for our 2 prestigious awards to 3 recipients, a couple of which were hinted at earlier by Jim Steranko. These are chosen eternally by members of the organization, past and present, and by past Synod Hall of Fame award recipients. The first one is the Special Recognition Award added last year. This honors for an inking career in American comic books of outstanding accomplishment, 25 years minimum, one chosen per year. The difference between this award and that of the Joe Synod Hall of Fame can be determined by one or more discerning factors related to the artist and their career. A limited career output, perhaps, inking themselves or a few others, but consisting of impressionable or influential work. Name recognition may not be as prevalent due to semi or full retirement or having passed away. Not necessarily known for innovations or awards, but considered a workhorse with considerable output and industry respect, and or various hurdles may have limited public exposure due to gender, ethnicity, or other challenges. This designation is for the underdog, the elder, or possibly gone or forgotten grave. Nominees this year included Jack Abel, Violet Barclay, aka Valerie Smith, Vince Coletta, Gary Martin, Alan Milgram, and Dave Simons. The runner-up spot was a tie between Al Milgram and Jack Abel, but the winner with the majority of votes went to Vince Coletta. Regrettably, Vinny is no longer with us, but to speak on his behalf, okay, that's right, I'm speaking for him. David is no longer in the building, or at least up here. I have a statement from Vinny's son, Frankie. The statement is, what a nice compliment to Vinny's talent, dedication to handling any and all inking assignments that needed to be done. Production art isn't something understood by everyone. Most inkers back then had a self-imposed limit on how many pages they would work on each month. My father didn't have that luxury for 2 reasons. 3, really. 1, he was lightning fast and could always be counted on to make the deadline. 2, Vince Coletta never turned down a friend in need, whether it was Big John or the old timers at DC. Almost every Friday he'd hear the words, sing 5 words, "We need it by Monday." So on top of whatever story or stories he was inking at the time, there would always inevitably be another stack of pages that needed to be inked without delay. And third, as our good friend and former DC comptroller Arthur Gutowitz answered when asked why Vinny was always so much in demand, because he was fast and he was accurate. Thank you to everyone responsible for bestowing this SRA award upon him, Franklin Coletta, April 28, 2016. And now we present the 2015 Joe Sinnott Hall of Fame Award for an inking career in American comics of outstanding accomplishment. 2 winners are chosen annually. The roster of former Hall of Fame recipients include Joe Sinnott, Terry Austin, Dick Giordano, Klaus Janson, Al Williamson, Wally Wood, Kevin Nolan, Mark McKenna, Scott Williams, Dick Ayers, Murphy Anderson, Joe Simon, Tom Palmer, and last year Joe Cooper and Steve Ditko. The artists nominated for this year's prestigious honor were Dan Adkins, John Beatty, Ernie Chan, aka Ernie Chua, Frank Giacoia, Bob McLeod, Jerry Ordway, and Joseph Rubenstein. After tallying the votes, the runners-up were Bob McLeod and Jerry Ordway, who tied. And the 2 winners were, as you could probably discern one of them from Jim's speech, Frank Giacoia and Joseph Rubenstein. Frank's nephew, Mike Giacoia, couldn't be here to accept the award, so here to read Mike's statement and accept the trophy is family friend and writer, Todd DeZago. Is that how you say your name, DeZago?
Giacoia.
Oh, switch that up.
Hi, everybody. I am a writer. I've been writing comics for 20 years, and all this talk about who has the most say and how good a story it is, it's the writer. I'm sorry. I know this is an English
Get your own
process, but just want to make that clear. Anyway, I would also like to point out that my name is Todd DeZago. I am not a Giacoia. I am friends with Mike Giacoia, who is Frank's nephew. I've known Mike for a long time. He said that he wasn't able to be here, but he sent me with this. I just want you to know what he looks like as I read this. I'm going to knock.
Well, you were a friend of the Giacoia family if you wrote the trophy.
Until I wrote it. This is from Mike, who looks like this. Frank Giacoia was my father's cousin. I'd see him at weddings and funerals and family functions as I grew up. He was funny and always had a big smile on his face. I read comics as a kid and drew some too. When I started to really pay attention to credits on the splash pages, that's when the light went on. I quizzed my dad about Frank relentlessly. When did he start? How much had he done? Needless to say, it was a long conversation. I would later find out my dad had even done backgrounds for Frank in his newspaper strip days. It's getting heavy. Where was it? Needless to say, it was a long conversation. I would later find out my dad had even done backgrounds for Frank in his newspaper strip days. How could I have missed this? As luck would have it, we had another family function coming up quickly. Of course, I found Frank immediately and pretty much monopolized his time. His reaction was pure Frank. He laughed. He told me to call him Uncle Frank. That would be easier. We would continue to talk at various family gatherings, and we spoke a lot on the phone. We went to a New York convention together with Joe Sinnott, who remains a friend to this day, of mine as well, and Mike Esposito. It was here that he introduced me to the king, Decker. I always liked Frank's work. To my young eyes, he always made the page look better. As I got older, I began to appreciate how really, really good he was. I loved wandering artist alleys and conventions where contemporaries of his would pull me aside and share wonderful stories about jobs conquered and jokes told. I'm lucky to still have friends in the industry today. Their appreciation and love of Frank's work speak volumes about his real impact in the industry. I wish we had spent more time together. I wish he wasn't taken from us so early. Time has done nothing except cement Frank's legacy as a giant in the industry. Frank may be gone, but Frank Giacoya's talent will live forever. Congratulations, Uncle Frank. Mike Giacoya, June 2016. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks again to Todd, who was a last-minute addition, so surprise. To present our second and final Hall of Fame recipient, I want to welcome Mike Grell. Mike is a creator of The War, Star Slayer, Sable, Maggie the Cat, Shaman's Tears, Shaman's Tears.
Let's call the whole thing.
I'm going to use this lack of sleep just like him. That's my excuse. Writer and artist on Green Arrow and the Longbow Hunters, and the guy who revealed Iron Man's secret identity. Mike Grell.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Joe couldn't be here to accept this honor, so I get to do it on his behalf. Something about statute of limitations hasn't expired yet. He can't come back to Charlotte for at least another year. So I am delighted to be able to accept this on Joe's behalf. We worked together years and years ago. He's a great collaborative inker, which, as you all know, it's not just a one-man show. It's everybody together, and the end result that you see in comics has everything to do with every tiny aspect that goes into it. So, Joe asked me to read a brief statement, and okay, I read it. A rabbi, a minister, and an anchor walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Is this a joke?" But getting to the heart of it, I love being in the 80 years plus of the life of comic books and hundreds and hundreds of people who have had jobs inking, to be singled out as a great honor and a little startling. I'm especially pleased to be inducted into the Joe Sinnott Inkwell Hall of Fame this year, along with Frank Giacoya, who is a friend and, in my opinion, the most versatile inker ever. Long deserved and overdue. I still steal from Frank all the time. My life has had a lot of heroes in it. When I was 13 years old, I met a wonderful man, Inkwell Hall of Fame member Dick Giordano, who hired me to be his errand boy gopher at the newly formed Continuity Associates Studios. Dick was incredibly generous with his time, even while meeting a deadline, to give me short lessons and tips on inking and drawing in general. At 17, I was looking for work instead of college, and got 3 jobs my first day, as long as Dick promised to watch me. A new guy, a few years older than me, Mike Nasser, had done samples for a DC series, and was generous enough to let me ink his actual samples. He got his first job, which turned out to be my first job, appropriately titled Tales of the Great Disaster. I owe him too. And now it's 41 years since that first gig. I worked with artists better than I will ever be. I read Kurt Swan's Superman as a little boy and got to ink Kurt Swan's Superman. How great is that? Buscema's Conan, Romita's Spider-Man, Infantino's Flash, Jack Kirby, the Cubers, Gene Colan, Jim Starlin, etc., etc. Holy crap, I was blessed. I'm honored and humbled to be inducted into the Joe Sinnott Inkwell Hall of Fame, joining heroes, idols, and friends, many of whom I have learned from and continue to steal liberally from to this day. Thank you. And this is the full text.
Posting the full thing on the website will probably test out bandwidth, but you know, we should try it. Okay. All right, thanks a lot, Mike. I will accept the Joe's trophy and ship it to him after I get back home. Joe Sinnott, the award's namesake and first recipient, made the following statement about this year's inductees. I was quite pleased to hear that the Inkwell Awards has selected two very deserving inkers into the Hall of Fame class of 2016, Frank Giacoia and Joseph Rubenstein. Frank was a fabulous inker and a good friend of mine. He left us much too soon. It was always a pleasure meeting up with Frank at shows and spending time with him. Frank's smooth, thick line graced the pages of virtually every Marvel title. I really enjoyed Frank's inking over Jack Kirby on Captain America. And like myself, we pretty much inked the Marvel Universe. Joe was an outstanding inker and portrait artist as well. I am absolutely honored by the great job he did in capturing my likeness for the cover of the second annual Joe Sinnott Inkers Challenge, which is, by the way, on sale for a donation at our table. I once penciled a piece that Joe inked for the official handbook of the Marvel Universe Index collection. At that time, Joe was doing all these Marvel Universe books, and he told me that he had actually worked on more Marvel characters than I had. Joe had some great background inks on the Superman vs. Spider-Man Treasure Edition that I inked over John Buscema. It is wonderful that Frank and Joe are the recipients of the 2016 Joe Sinnott Hall of Fame Award. These two superb artists make the already great list of Hall of Famers even more elite. Thank you to the Inkwells Committee for electing them, and thanks to everyone for their continued support for the Inkwell Awards, Joe Sinnott, April 2016. Okay, could we have one final round of applause for all of our winners? And to all of our guest speakers. Before I continue the Q&A, we had 3 Silver Inkwell Awards for our our nomination committee for 5 years of service. Those members were Michelle Witchy-Poo, I don't know if that's her real name, probably not. Bob Bertal and Johnny B. Girardi, a known inker, and I will, and none of them made it here. We will have these shipped to them. And we'll now, there we go, thank you. We'll now move on to the annual Q&A with our winners and any interested speakers. Well, they're not here. Following that, we'll call ticket numbers for our door prizes. We have Stefan,
I have a question about.
and Walden. Yes.
You gave me the wrong award.
Oh,
and I gotta get that.
I'm sorry. Frank Giacoia, that's the right.
Yeah.
Which one did I give you?
Jason. Sorry, I'm really sorry. Can I please have the right? Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful show.
Okay. That was an encore appearance from Todd DeZago. Okay, for Stefano, sorry, I am very far. And Walton, do we have any questions for our award recipients? Don't make this be the first time we don't have any questions, please. Oh, right there in the room.
I have a question for Stefano.
Yes.
In your speech, you talked about how you were lucky to have a job now. You're working on a popular comic, and you made a. I comment about how it may not last much longer. Were you alluding to maybe the end of that book?
Well, the thing is, I'm a freelancer,
Okay.
and I don't have a contract.
Okay.
So there are two things that are looming over the horizon for me, because as Mr. Stranko was pointing out, not only inkers, but every freelancer always has to look a couple of steps ahead. If we have a family especially, it's up on our concern. And the two things that I'm looking at are not anything that I've heard or been
Okay.
told or anything like that, but just to be clear, I'm not the creator of The Walking Dead. I don't have any say about whether I'm going to continue inking it or not, and I don't have a specified amount of time. It's just kind of a month-to-month gig, basically. So far, I seem happy. I think I'm going to be there for a while. I'm hoping, knock on wood. But the other thing is, The Walking Dead is not done. I think Robert has spoken about this. In any case, I can say that my impression is that it's not a property like Mickey Mouse or Spider-Man or the Avengers that is going to go on perennially. Eventually, The Walking Dead story is probably going to come to a close. So I pretty much know that, as Mr. Stranko was saying, it's not very likely that there's going to be another super popular book like The Walking Dead that I'm going to be, picked as inker for. There's hundreds of really talented inkers out there, and there's no guarantee that I'll be inking Star Wars or anything like that. So that's a word of caution to all freelancers, all inkers. Always think ahead and be prepared for things not always going the way we're going this particular month. That cuts both ways. If it's not going great, it's going to get better. If it's going great, be prepared.
So no scoop today. Walking Dead is not coming to an end. That's not an official statement. It's just something that Robert Kirkman has implied, I believe, in some conversation. Good question, though. Any other questions? We just won our door prizes, huh? Yes, sir.
Question for Walter.
Okay.
What do you find is the most challenging aspect of your job for inking like a single book?
Yes, sometimes I will work 18 hours just to finish deadline. I've done 2 nights no sleep just to finish deadlines. Most of the time when I get a project, it's already due yesterday. So I would try to stay up as long as I can just to finish the project. That's the most challenging part.
Especially if you're doing like multiple books.
Yes, multiple books.
How many can you juggle things?
I juggled 4 books at once, providing that it's not due on the same week. But if it's due on the same week, I have to kind of just let something go.
Yes.
Just really use breakdowns or somebody like say Nick Branch, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not that he's super easy. I've seen
Yeah, tighter pencils take me longer. Doing finishes is faster because I can go in there and draw and ink at the same time. Yeah, but inking Nick Bradshaw or when I used to ink Art Adams, that took a long time. Or tighter pencils take longer. Even though it's just basically kind of like tracing, but all the lines are there and you have to be precise with the lines.
But I mean, I think he's absolutely right. It's precise, and then I imagine you feel this too. It's you don't just have to be precise; you have to preserve the life of the line. Like Mr. Stranko was saying, it's possible to take something away from the drawing, and we don't want to do that. So you have to really have your part in it, whether it's you or just in it. It's just the inkers that I think are more successful are inkers that actually care enough when they're tracing, and it is tracing. I'm not offended when people say inkers are tracers. It is tracing, but it's not as simple as it seems. There's a lot that goes into even tracing a simple line.
There's a lot of control in tracing line.
If I could say something, I think you're trying to carry on the expectations of the pencil. Those are crazy. Be faithful to their intent, but embellish and enhance as much as you can. The thing about crazy, tight, detailed pencils, they take a lot of time, but the good thing about them is you can mess up a line or two and no one's going to notice because you've got hundreds of thousands of others all around it. I find, because I see the Angel Medina, and it's like, that was my first job, so thankfully whenever I found my face, I hope no one noticed. But yeah, that takes up time. Whereas yeah, if you don't, some inquiries can stiffen up and they get a rough breakdown. They're not natural artists and all that, and trying to figure out what the pencil's intent is. But for others, you can speed up a lot of the work. Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I have a question for both of you. What's your preferred method of inking now? Are you doing traditional on the paper, or are you going to the digital inks?
For me, I'm all traditional, and then I'll do touch of work, Photoshop.
Oh, okay.
Usually, yeah.
Exactly the same for me. I work on paper and then I use Photoshop or Touch-Up, which is nice.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that, most of the stuff used to be directly on the original pencil art.
Right.
I find me personally, almost 99.9% of it now is sent to me in my email as a file that I print as cyan blue on my large printer. Last year Fiona Staples won for the all-in-one, and I believe she works on a tablet to do her work. And it's the same, it's the same skill, just different tools. I don't know what the percentage is using digital inking these days.
Now that you mention that, and I know there's some people that ink digitally, and it looks to me like they do good work. There's a few pages that have been all digitally. You can get decent results. I like working on paper and only saving digital for touch-up. But the question of blue lines, it's interesting you brought that up. One thing I kind of like about blue lines, because I care about the work, is that working on blue lines, much more than working on the original pencils, gives us as inkers the opportunity to really go back in Photoshop and look at a pen and look at a figure and say, you know what, I was a little off there, but now I can see, I still have the original digital file of the pencil, and I can see exactly how I need to adjust that line so that the facial expression is right or whatever. I think overall the quality of point goods benefits from our capacity to revise our own work that way relatively easily. It's nice.
Do you find what working for something for a black and white book as opposed to then for color book affects how you're reading something?
Not for me. When I ink, I see everything black and white anyway. Yeah, so if it's color,
For me, it's been interesting because I grew up probably under the same tradition that you did, which is the tradition when colors were, a completely different system, much less important than they are now. Colorists right now have much more potential to really influence the look of a book. So I grew up with this idea that you don't leave things for color. You ink everything so that it works as a black and white drawing, and if it works as a black and white drawing, it should work as color unless the color is completely drops the ball, which normally they wouldn't. We've been going through this really crazy period with coloring. I think I actually kind of love to see what's happening with colors, but it's been a little bit of a mess. Obviously, there's been situations where we may do our work as inkers, and then a colorist goes in, and they may not be particularly experienced, but because they have so much power, they can overwhelm the art. I've had an interesting experience, kind of for the first time in the last year. I work on two books right now, The Walking Dead and Manifest Destiny. And on The Walking Dead, it's a black and white book. Cliff Blackburn puts the tones on it, but it's basically a black and white book. And Charlie and I, both think in terms of black and white, basically, straightforward. Manifest Destiny is the first book that I've worked on where the colorist sincerely has more impact on the art than the inker. The inker is still important, and I've been working with Tony Akins, who's a great artist and happens to be inking this book right now. And I have to say, frankly, his work just shines on it. He's a brilliant inker over Matt Roberts' work. But the colorist is also brilliant, and his work is so much more heavy-handed than traditional coloring would have been, that Tony and I, when we're inking Matt's work, for the first time in my career, really find ourselves saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to step back here and let Owen Janney, who's the colorist on the book, do his work. So now, my answer would be, yes, I treat color books differently, but it really depends on what the book is and who the colorist is. It's that idea of teamwork, which is one of the things that I love about comics, All of us have to work together, and if we're aware of each other, we can rely on each other. And for the first time in my career, I've had conversations with Tony and even with Matt Roberts where it's like, okay, I'm not going to put that black shadow here, but I would put otherwise. I'm just going to let, or renderings. Owen just when he colors, he does something like I've seen Dean White do, where he'll actually draw little lines in color and stuff like that. So we know to step back a little bit on the texture, step back a little bit on the shading, and let Owen do his thing, basically. And that's kind of a new thing for him, but it's happening.
Yeah, when I started out, it was also before the really advanced coloring system, and I've got my mind trained. You know, the page should go out so it reads well as if it wasn't being colored. It wasn't until like the late 90s, I said 2000, you know, then you started getting from the penciler. I'll leave this, just leave that for the color. So even though I know that's the case, I don't think I could just shut that off. I don't like a page going out looking like a coloring book. I want to bring some grays or whatever textures I need to bring some color to it myself. Questions? Okay. Well, all right. Big thank you to them. Inkwells will be putting like a full speech transcript at the website for the couple of you that are interested. But yeah, you got off easy this year. We'll now. I just want to say in closing before we get to the door prizes, thanks immensely for your support for another outstanding ceremony, and we look forward to seeing you all at next year's event.